Ratunoke to share a few verses with us before we go into a bit of chorus. It's always good to sing when we get together. But before we get to that, I'll just ask us, invite you to prayer. Let's pray. Father God, we come before you with thanksgiving in our hearts. We bless your name this morning. We thank you, Father. We give you glory and honor and praise for the opportunity to be together. Thank you for your traveling mercies upon our lives, and particularly those who come from outside Suva, those from the west, those from the Eastern Division, particularly as they cross the sea to get to Suva. We thank you for those who are still making their way here, those from the north. We want to acknowledge, Lord God, your power and your greatness as we gather as a family today. We thank you for journeying with us, Father, journeying with us over the last 6 months of the year. Since we last met, we thank you that you have continued to bless our efforts. You continue to guide us and to guide our steps, Lord God, as we work to support those who are needy, speak for those who are hopeless, to help where we saw the need, Father. Thank you for all that you have given us to do. Thank you for giving us the strength. Thank you for giving us the resources to be able to respond, Father. Thank you for the call that you place upon our lives. We continue to acknowledge you in our work, God, in all of what we have managed to achieve. We continue to wait upon you for all of the other things that we want to do, but we are not at this point able to do. We know that in your time and with your provisions, we will be able to carry out that work, Father. Thank you for the next few days, Father. We commit to you our lives. We commit to you our program for the rest of the day. We ask for your guidance, ask for your Holy Spirit to be present in all of our conversations and our discussions. But in all that we do, we honor and we praise you, Lord God. We glorify you, Father. We ask that you also prepare us for the upcoming AGM, the discussions that we will have. We ask that you will lead us in that as well. Praise you, we thank you. We ask all of these things in no other name, but in your name alone, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen. I did not really ask her to come up. Gracias.
Sati koma kabemekani benondana lolo kanu sakiriki bine kabelambani Carisito Karena ini sudah na maju interview
Kulina lima dipini dole talanoa dipini na leson ni kalau dipini dole na vitalanoa tunggu dole vitalanoa na wado dole vitalanoa sako di dole mo ne leso kaya na tiboro na kali siru ko dan vitalanoa dan wasi nol dari usi tikin. Kenapa kelakar itu ana nendeng mulai setahu tinamon setahu kan itu ana suara bima kebuan yang tiginya aku. Lalu itu tua dia kos ada mai buli setelah lalu ya ngambil karena dolabati karena nakatu itu irna buvale itu irna besusul yang nanti itu dulu yang mau sana manon rebuli manon besusuli derroda tipo le ora metà di tettura na golo itua satu di baru tegul nak nama tumbula satu kena nak siapa dengan buah nama tahu dengan buah antara laki-laki na tua ni nonda vingaral nenda nonda tipo na nonda katumba veira na isul veira na palga itu na nonda bola veira na awat itu na nonda bola di bukan na siru na vitalanoa ini vitalanoa tipo na isipeli ke tisu tapos ndo na isul como é mesmo sulaki na lesoni da deitu tina na lesoni na mariwa si timpediwa betul kita lima. Sabaluni na nada Mexico sin vida en la buli en la oblimada ni na leu tiba na mo naka en la sintaka na dola Mexico na nanda bolo bayalo na dola Mexico na nanda rai en kena daral tutu memberi tirana sengana kenda sengana menda on bibir susul era bina kata tu bersetai non dengan en sini dai untuk saya na apa sama lelaka pengaruh na tahu kuah en kena utanga nanon rawaru taki, nanon marui, isusul, gurin tamogol, and a woman of the
I think the challenge is being placed with us, and I would just ask Pastor to perhaps before offering a final word of prayer to begin us on the 4 days discussion, just to perhaps offer a few words to reinforce, perhaps and even to connect some of what we will try to do over the next 4 days to what we have started this morning.
Looking across the room, we all look anxious about the 4 days. In the discussions we've had with the ET over the very early this morning, late last night, over the last couple of days, is trying to figure out where we're going to, at least for us to be sure where we want to go. One of when the flyer or the concept note came around to all of us, it was talking about development effectiveness. And what is development effectiveness? One of the things I thought about yesterday and the day before is when we talk about development or what we bring to our communities. Many times we talk about really development of this, really development of that, but it's the effectiveness of the development and how will it impact our people and our communities. Earlier this morning, we were looking over some pictures. The EDPNGO showed pictures about the celebration below over the weekend. Yeah? And one of the things we kept talking about, this is localization. Looking at local knowledge that we have and how effective is the development that we bring to our communities. So no pressure, but our responsibility or our roles here today is we're bringing the voices of our people. It's always about voices. The voices of our people in our communities, ensuring their voices are heard, and what will we take back? Sorry, is it Yasmin? Yasmin or Monica? Monica. I'll float in between Italy and English. Na kung ano nakita na manina sa to manariba para sa sector na yan. Yeah, we think that development coming to our communities that okay, good, it looks good, but it's connecting all the dots. Where's the development coming? Are we looking at the Medellin talked about earlier, the voiceless or Ratu Noki's inspirational devotion this morning, talking about young or the children. Yeah? I shared in our chat rooms this morning Vani's remarks to the dailies, the digital is talking about young people, children, doing scrap metals, selling food, and tweet this morning was asking, where is our role there? What is our responsibility? So when we talk about development, it talks also about responsibility. What is our role? Of course, we cannot save the whole world, but let's start with our community. And these 4 days, please, when there are questions or when our partners from government gets here, let's not be afraid to ask questions. Let's have difficult and uncomfortable conversations. So that when we go back, okay, this one ticks. And I saw Pat getting up this morning, so oh, here comes a lot of questions. Pat, don't throw that away. Yeah, I have our questions ready, but maybe one of the things that we also need to think about when we raise questions is we already have some of the solutions. Okay, this is a question, I think it should be done that way. Effectiveness. Yeah, because you know what's happening in the communities. You have the expertise. Yeah, everybody else is coming to learn from you. One of the things I learned in Kiowa 2 weekends ago, we had lovely fish, and we had you saw my picture. So one of the things that the people of Kiowa or the council or the Kiowa Island community organization kept talking about is we know what we want. We learned a lot from that. So bring that to the table and these 4 days, connecting all of this. I know it's going to be difficult, but you know, if we feel our conversation in the room, I'm not so comfortable. Okay, there's morning tea, there's lunch, there's afternoon tea. Corner them somewhere and ask those conversations. Ask those questions. You know, like when you do your women's weather watching all that, bring that to the table. And also our partners that will be joining us. One partner is already here, or 2. So have those conversations. Ensuring, and as Vanya said earlier, we're here as family. Yeah, and sometimes family we do not like each other. but let's have a conversation inside, not outside. Yeah, something. And for those that have gone to international conferences and spaces, we call it corridor lobbying. Yeah? We go and meet the politician. We go, hey, we want this. Can you present this thing? But we here as them, so let's talk with them. And when people come, or government or other stakeholders come, we present with one voice. Again, going back to voices. I hope that at end of these 4 days, we have something to take back home, our back back home to our communities, because that's what we will be expecting from us. So I hope it hasn't added more pressure to all of us. You're in our list, and I'm looking for Kai from below. It's like she's already wondering how can I relay this back to our community. Yeah? So when we talk, when we share voices or questions here, keep thinking of back home. Yeah, in Ba, in Kakiraki, in Kandawu, yeah, in Ovalau. Let's keep thinking for our informal settlements in Suva and the city, and someone also as well. Keep thinking of how can we make it better. If that's really our role. If one thing we need to take back today or after the end of 4 days is how can we make it better? Okay? So thank you so much. I've been talking for a bit. Yes. So we'll go to prayer and then our session for today. Let's bow our head in prayer. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, dear Lord, Heavenly Father, our refuge. You are the Alpha and the Omega. You are a provider. You are our safety net. We thank you so much, dear Lord, that we're here as family, and we know that you'll be traveling with us in these 4 days. We thank you, Lord, for the lives of our family from Katapo, from Overland, those from Moira, the people of my family from the north that are still on the way, and those of us who are here. Thank you very much, Lord, for your protection, your guidance, your travel mercies of bringing us yesterday, and those that left very early this morning, those who have been here for a couple of days, and those who are to arrive. We ask you, dear Lord, to give us the wisdom. We ask you, dear Lord, to give us the patience. There will be times when we'll be very angry, very anxious, but we ask you, dear Lord, to direct our conversations so that when we leave at the end of these 4 days, we're taking back our back. We thank you, dear Lord, for the second period for the heart. It's not going to be easy, dear Lord, but we know that you're with us. Thank you, dear Lord, for the team in Diango, executive director, always and traveling with us. We ask you, dear Lord, to forgive us our shortcomings. Many times we distance ourselves from you and your words, dear Lord. With us today until the end of the 4 days. We bring all this back to you, dear Father, in the name of our mighty Lord and Savior.
Naka, thank you, Sepesan, the board chair of course, as well as a member of the board of Piango. I just wanted to acknowledge that. I know that some of us came very early this morning, so I just thought maybe we can stretch. While we're stretching, I'm just going to ask Executive Director Piango to make her way up, and just while she's here, she might be able to offer perhaps a few remarks about our activities, what she might be able to speak also about is the role that Piango plays in connecting EFCOS to the partners that are helping to pull together our this week's programs. And so I just wanted to maybe ask us to stand up and stretch. I know that some of us they stood up to sing, but just to stretch while Madam Siali comes up I know that whatever she will begin this morning, Josiah will expand on, and then I'll very briefly go through some of the program that we anticipate for today. We want to make sure that it goes at your pace, knowing that some of us, left our homes in the wee hours of the morning. I'm looking at text. And Monica might have been one of the first on the bus. Oh, there, right, okay. So maybe just stretch like you're reaching for the sky. And while I just get Madam Cialit to come up and speak, we're just taking a bit of time because last night I spent 2 hours chasing one PS economy around the room, trying to get him to commit to come at 10 o'clock. So we'll see how well I did last night. So Ciali, I'll invite her to come and speak. Can you just welcome Madam Ciali? Got a t-shirt from, so I have to wear that thing. Thank you. Please take a seat. You see quite a few familiar faces in the room. Maybe because I've been attending EFCO's activity far too many years. I'm sitting also at the table of my Kandawu Dikos. When Mani was asking me to come, the Kandawu gang was saying maybe they're calling you to dance. Probably well, because that's what we have been doing in Kandawu. It's a great opportunity to be here. Thank you, Sepesa, for continuing to lead EFCOS and the team, but also the courses, working from your community, district level, engaging with the district officers, commissioners. Nobody knows well how to engage with them. But all of you. And because we know how relationship works, it does not start over time. You have to work over it with the people that you know, people that you are connected to, and how we lead those building those relationships. It's exactly the same way that Piango and EFCOS are working. Particularly, Piango is a regional platform of umbrella NGOs. Our members in the Pacific work across 24 countries. Across the Pacific in Fiji, EFCOS is our member. So I started with Piango at the regional level. I used to do the similar work in Tonga like Vani, running around and annoying the secretary generals and CEO of governments to make sure that when they do their work, it's reflected the issues that are faced by community. And the work that they do ensure that public services reaches to the most that need the support. So quickly, in terms of how Piango is connecting to development effectiveness, we do a lot of work around the idea of development. A lot of people find that very hard to understand, maybe because we make it like highfalutin and hard the concept to understand. But basically, it's how we live our life in our community every day. When we talk about education, when we talk about health, when we talk about road, access road to the main town, all that related to how development is about. So don't ever think that you are in this room that you don't have anything to contribute. Just think of development as something that you face every day. Even before you speak to your husband or wife and start talking about family matters that relating to your own household, that's development. And so you have a lot to contribute. So I encourage everyone to think about that in a way that it can make sense. So development effectiveness is how we as people make sure that when we have money within our government budget, which is basically taxes that we pay, if you are not working, don't think that you don't pay tax. You pay tax by buying bread and things from the shop. Yeah? You contributed to the pot of money that the government is using to make sure that public services are available to the citizens. So we are already starting to connect that you have something to contribute to development. But at the same time, that pool of funding that's all coming together, we voting our officials into the government system, into the pro-democracy mechanisms that makes them, this is us giving them the authority to look after our money. So we need to hold them accountable in terms of how they're using the resources to make sure that we have a good road, that we make sure that we have a good education for our children, make sure that we have health services that's applied to everything. So in terms of development effectiveness, this is a journey that has come from aid. Yeah? But we usually talk about aid effectiveness at some point, where we were just talking about how other countries in the world are putting in resources to help some of our countries that are less fortunate to, again, talk about development. And most of the time, those funds that are brought in by donors that we all are familiar with from outside our Pacific is to support, again, development at the national level that's relating to opportunity to exchange goods, trade. Yeah? And then you may also recognize that a lot of the donors' money are coming into infrastructure, to our roads, to our port, our airport, because they do also have an interest in how that money is being used to support our countries in exchange for Fiji, for example, to have a better services so they can send their goods or their services across in terms of how they're buying, using their aid to support. So there's a lot of complications around that, but that doesn't mean that we don't understand. It's just very simple. It's just how that we see that aid money is being given to government, which we are have a say in terms of who should be in there to govern the resources that are available for us to make our life better in terms of development. So that has been where Piango has been engaging in this process, is to make sure that we just don't talk about aid. Yeah? We talk about development, how aid is supporting our lives to be better. And because if we are not engaging in this space, it would mean that only a few will make the decisions on our behalf. And we know when only a few make decisions on our behalf, they can only make decisions that is in their best interest, not representing the interests of everybody. And this is why it's important for us to start having this conversation, because there are times when we need to remind those that are managing our resources that there are services that are not there. That there are services that need to be improved to make sure that everyone, not just like a few, but the whole of our populations, whole of our communities, access to those same services. So development effectiveness is supported by some of our development partners. We have today is a support coming from the CBDE, is probably a name that you will get to be familiar with as we go. And the longer version of that is that you see the banner there, civil society organization partnership for development effectiveness. At the global level, this is a group of civil society organizations that comes together and say, well, we do have a say to make sure that aid shifted the conversation from aid to development effectiveness, also shifted the conversations from just only government making decisions around our money, but also shifted to make sure that our civil society and our citizens are part of that. And Piango has been part of this journey of the CBDE since it gets started. And I think that our two self-appointed facilitators here will talk a lot more about how we have been engaging in this process. That is interesting because it's not just that Piango is part of this grouping, but at a global level, it's the same fight that we have in making sure that our Pacific are being recognized. And I must say that in this platform of CBDE, this is the only platform that we know that Piango had fight for the Pacific region to be a standalone region. Yeah, we might talk about it, we might see how this being structured. As Sina and Koche at the back know more about that, where Pacific has always been lumped together with Asia. Yeah? And when you put Pacific with Asia, we all know how it does. Yeah? When we talk about population, Asia will take over the resources. When we talk about anything, it's dominated because they are bigger, they are much more vocal. Their culture, they don't have any hesitation at all to speak out their mind. Whereas for us in the Pacific, we go under the table before we struggle to hear what we are wanting to say because of that culture. So we face it. And so with the CBE, I say that Piango has fought hard, not just Piango as in terms of Josiah and the rest of us. Piango, of course, and all of our members across the Pacific had been supporting this call for the Pacific to be a standalone, recognized region. And so we have a seat at this table. In terms of their financing, it has always been Piango because Piango is the secretariat for the regional work of the CBDE. This is the first time that we started to see that their financing are going to our country level, Fiji in particular, efforts. So we are really excited about this opportunity. And so we are hoping that we would have a good conversation that we could report back to CBDE and say that we had come up with all sorts of ideas, new ideas, innovative ideas to shift the conversation about development effectiveness. So that it's not just Piango that we get resources from this, but efforts can continue to push the boundary and say, no, really, development effectiveness means that you can have to go further down to supporting countries. A lot of their funding are actually from EU, but they also have the Switch government. They have a lot of resources. So the good thing about these organizations that they're tapping to resources that often most of us in the Pacific we find it hard to access. Yeah? And this is one of the reasons why having Piango as a regional collective access the global, and we try and see how we can mainstream that down to our country level. So I'm talking too much, but really, when we come to data development effectiveness, you can't really avoid talking about money. You can't really avoid talking about issues that we face every day. We also have to make sure, how do we identify our issues? And where does the government put those issues in terms of how they're going to use that to drive development? It's through all the plan, national plan. Some of you have your community plan. And as the Pocha hits it, how do we connect the dots? And we hope that two experts here, the facilitators, will give us like a pathway, yeah? Like a roadmap where do you see yourselves with the work that you do connected to the whole picture of development effectiveness, about how you have a say in the money, about how you say, how you have your say in terms of developing the plan, different level, and how you have to have a say in terms of holding our leaders, holding our officials, holding donors accountable in terms of when they commit to development, it means that it has to go all the way to the people. So with that, I have to hope that everyone will enjoy the conversation today. If you feel like that you are lost, please speak up and just say to the two facilitators to slow down, because sometimes they. But yeah, all the best. It's a family conversation, so it's exciting. Some families often run away outside if they feel uncomfortable with the conversation. It's fine. You can get out and have a smoke or something, and then come back and continue the conversation. Just help me connect this so I can show the program as we go through, and just thought maybe if you already have it in your folder, you should have. One is the materials, and you won't be able to read all of it today, but it's there to help you understand the journey we will take. What you have is a little booklet as well. And the booklet is it's almost like a guideline. It's something you can refer to, a reference material. So a lot of it we will not take you through the whole book. We will just give you a specific, a Fiji contextualized content, and what we plan not to do is to drown you in all of that content. Right? So we will simplify it as much as possible so that you can make connections to what you're already doing. Right? So I'll just okay. So I'm sorry if you can't see this. I'll just try and zoom in on the time. Right? Yeah, yeah. Okay. So basically, we were supposed to start at 9. We started at 9:30, and we can then ask West team to either do push-ups or after that because they came late. What? But Kanda will be in charge of the penalty. So from this morning, we are going to go into aid and development costs. So agenda 1, which is really looking at development effectiveness. You can scroll to the other side, please, a little bit. Yes. That's around from 9 to 10. We were supposed to do some cover that aspect, and I must thank Madam Director and Board Chair for starting that conversation for us this morning. And even with our devotion, just very aptly connected to why we are doing this work. Why are we doing this work? Talking about children, we talk about elders, and whether they work that we are doing is helping to transform their lives and their circumstances. So a little bit of that. We expect government to come in from 10 to 11. If they don't, we'll go on without them. But they are supposed to be here to present to us on the policies that are supposed to guide the work around development effectiveness. So that's from 10 to 11 a.m. and we are at 10:15. And then when we go down, Josiah, session 3, is to talk about the framework that we have as FCOS. And you'll be surprised because, it's a consolidation of some of the work we already do. So that's from 11:30 to 1. From 11:30 to 1, and of course before that we'll have government and Josiah Chirun. These two Josiahs, there's one Josiah from Kadavu and Josiah from Laos sitting there. But for Bianco, he will take us through a crash course, if you like. And then after lunch is just action planning. We plan to finish by at the latest 4:30. That's what our day will look like. Any questions? No? Good, okay. You can note too that there's a space at the back. If you get tired of sitting on the chair, you can go and sit at the back as well. So before I hand it over to Josiah, I will, because we don't all know each other. We know a little bit of who is here and there. I know everyone, but we'll have to try and correction. I don't know everyone. I have seen some new people. So I will ask, yes, like you, sir. So I'll just ask everyone to introduce themselves and I'll start from the back, yeah? Maybe because they've been sitting here, they were the first in the room. We'll start from the back table and move this way, yeah? Okay, so. I shall hand over to Josiah now. Josiah will take us through our first session, which is will be heavy, but I hope that I think we have enough time to discuss some of the issues that might come out of Josiah's presentation, and that he'll be available to us the whole of today. So you have all of the today to ask him the questions after the presentation. So over to you, Josiah.
First of all, to everyone, I'd like to thank the colleagues that have Sepesa, Siale, and Wani. Part of my presentation, they've already covered that. So just to begin, my task for today is basically to give an overview, a lecture. Much of the things that I will be saying now is what I've been learning from Wani and Siale when we go around for the CPD work. And much of that has been with the engagement with CPD and the work, how development effectiveness comes about here, as Siale has already highlighted. So in terms of the history of the CPD, when we talk about development effectiveness, one of the things that we are talking about is on development cooperation. We're talking about development cooperation. For many of us, we all know, as already highlighted, when we talk about development cooperation, it's about what? Something that was mentioned earlier. Something to do with what? Money. It has to do with money, and much of this money comes from the donors and to our government. And now we as well as CSOs, much of the work that we are doing, we are also funded by donors. So there is a need, not only do we hold governments accountable when we talk about development effectiveness, we as well as CSOs, we need to be mutually accountable. So in terms of the history of development cooperation, as I've already highlighted, much of the work has been on aid effectiveness, trying to, much of the aid in the olden days, so we talk about development cooperation, the assistance and support to countries, fostering long-term benefits towards social and economic development. I know that in Nandi, there's a Japanese project with the dredging of the Nandi River. So those are some of the development cooperation that our governments have with other overseas donors. In terms of the timeline from aid to development cooperation or development effectiveness, the timeline, it began in 2002 in the Monterey Consensus in 2002. During that time, many of us, as we grow up doing economics from secondary school, we all know that when we talk about aid, there has been complaints. We normally hear complaints about aid being conditional. Much of the aid is conditional. It comes with conditions from donors and does not assist our countries to achieve their development aspirations. So in one of the first global high-level meeting that they have in Monterey, the first dialogue was held on how to bring about aid effectiveness. So we are talking about aid effectiveness here. 2002 Monterey Consensus. There was a consensus of the need to shift how aid is given around the world. And then in 2003, that was the first high-level meeting called the Rome Declaration on Harmonization. So this is basically on the timelines for aid effectiveness. We are still talking aid effectiveness. Then in 2005, another second high-level meeting at the global leaders is on the Paris Declaration on Aid Effectiveness. With the Paris Declaration, it's about ownership. So developing countries, so in this high-level meeting, one of the principles of this Paris Declaration is that developing countries must set their own development. So when aid comes in, it supports that. The ownership is from the development countries and need alignment. So those are some of the principles that we have. Alignment, where donor countries and organizations bring their support in line with the national strategies and use the local systems that we have. So when we look at our national systems, we look at our national development strategies, it talks about how the donors should align their support to meet to the strategies of our national countries. And if you look at, for us, for CSOs, if you like referring back to CSOs, just to give a scenario, like for instance, all our donors, they should align that to the work that FCOS is doing. Like we have Child Fund Australia. When it comes to humanitarian, it should be aligned to the role that FCOS plays in the humanitarian. Similarly, at the national level, that's also how it should be aligned with the donors. That was one of the key outcomes from the Paris Declaration. Finally, harmonization, donor countries and organizations, they coordinate. As we know that we have a lot of donors. For Fiji, we have a lot of donors. We have the EU, we have Australia, DFED. There's a need for these donors to all harmonize their approaches, or complement one another to avoid duplication and waste of resources so that it can reach a lot of people. Not targeted towards only one area, but to meet all the other areas, the development priorities of our countries. And finally, how do we manage results and mutual accountability? So that was from Paris. From Paris, most of our leaders at the regional level, after the 2005 meeting, 2007, our regional leaders who are going to meet here next week, they also met and also adopted the regional declaration on Pacific Principles on Aid Effectiveness. That was in 2007. So from that meeting, it took us 2 years to develop our own Pacific Principles on Development Effectiveness, which looks at the work that we do at the region. Because I know that for many of you who are aware of Lome, for those who come from the West, the sugar industry preferential access, that was through the Lome and the Cotonou Agreement. These are EU agreements that not only for Fiji, but for the regional. So when we talk about Pacific Principles, it's about how we, those regional pots of funds that are used in the region, how do we work together as a region to improve ourselves in terms of the aid? How do we be effective in terms of aid money, how we utilize the aid money? So when we're doing that, some of the work that we do in terms of that is that there are peer reviews and conducted from countries to countries, and this was strengthened later on in 2009 when our regional leaders as well developed a case compact. So they are not putting the Pacific the principles or what, but just on the main agenda based on this. But from that, from the Paris, from Accra, then we come to Busan. For many of you, when it comes to development effectiveness, this is where it all started. The conversation at the global level. It is through the Busan Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation. So at Busan, all of our countries, they all met there, and they all agreed that there is the need to shift the paradigm from aid effectiveness to development effectiveness, as already highlighted. For much of the aid effectiveness, okay, we just give money, they should build the roads here, there. But when it comes to development effectiveness, as already highlighted, what are the benefits of that? How it's trickling down to the community? We look at how it brings about. Sometimes aid or money can bring about social injustice. So when we talk about development effectiveness, it needs to provide a human rights-based approach to the way aid has been conducted, or aid has been dispersed by our countries. And in terms of Busan, similar to the Paris Principle, it's about country leadership and ownership, a focus on results, inclusive partnerships among development actors. Within the Busan, this is where we as CSOs, we were part of that. But prior to that, it was just the national governments. So for the Busan, we as CSO, we become partners, or we are development actors. And it also talks about transparency and accountability to one another. How do we build on transparency of working, improve service delivery, and clarify mutual accountabilities? So as I've said, from Busan, much of the work from there, it's about shifting the paradigm from aid effectiveness to development effectiveness. That address, so that focus on sustainable change, that addresses the root causes as well as the symptoms of poverty, inequality, and marginalization. It places human rights, social justice, gender equality, and ecological sustainability at the core of aid relations and the development process. Let me tell you one story. In 2019, I think I don't know whether that case is still ongoing. One of our similar to FCOS from the Samoa Umbrella NGO, one of their members, it's an environmental and a customary NGO for customers. They actually took their Samoan government and the ADB to court. It's based on these principles of development effectiveness. Why? The ADB, the work that they have been conducting monitoring on how the ADB has been doing the development, supporting the government of Samoa with the conditions that they have, that there's a need to change customary land and it's affecting them. So they took the ADB and the Samoan government to court. And that was one of the things I believe that also led to the change in government because of, from that case, how it builds up. And it talks about, because when you talk about development effectiveness, it should it should address the root causes of symptoms, should not cause marginalization or inequality. When people are affected, even if you're giving money, if people are affected, that is not development effectiveness. It should bring about a positive, sustainable, lasting change. So that's roughly about what is development effectiveness, as already highlighted. But even to the route to Busan, 2011 was Busan. But before we went to Busan, the CSOs here in the Pacific, as already highlighted, they have been meeting. The first meeting was in Tonga, and they've come up with their own Pacific principles. The Pacific principles for development effectiveness, where CSOs will where CSOs are committing to these principles that they will contribute into that high-level declaration in Busan. So from the Pacific principles, then they meet with other CSOs at the international level. Together from the 10 principles in the Pacific principles that have been shared with you, this is what the outcome at the global level before it went to Busan. Most of the times, the Istanbul principles. And these are the 8 principles for the CSO development effectiveness. We should guide our work as CSOs, and I know that Vani will touch base on this later on, because this is where most of our member countries or NLUs, they have their code of accountability is derived to the Istanbul principles that we will talk about in the next few days. So for any development effectiveness for CSOs, first, it must respect and promote human rights and social justice. Secondly, it must embody gender equality and equity while promoting women's and girls' rights. Third, it should focus on people's empowerment, democratic ownership and participation. 4, promote environmental sustainability. 5, practice transparency and accountability. 6, pursue equitable partnerships and solidarity. 7, create and share knowledge and commit to mutual learning. And 8, commit to realizing positive, sustainable change. So when CSOs went to the Busan, they managed to set their own principles that will guide them in terms of the work that they will do. So when it comes to the Busan Agreement, our role as civil society is embedded in that high-level document where it lists down what the government will be doing, what we as CSOs will be doing. So for us, CSOs, as civil society is already, as normally many workshops, Vani always refer to them as Busan. It means in Busan. So for Busan, the Busan Partnership, paragraph 22 of that partnership agreement, it states a role of civil society. And there's a need for us to remember this because many of the development countries, even the donors, they all agree to the Busan Agreement. And our role is that CSOs, we play a vital role in enabling people to claim their rights, in promoting rights-based approaches, in shaping development policies and partnerships, and in overseeing their implementation. We as CSOs, we also provide services in areas that are complementary to those provided by states. Recognizing this, we as CSOs, we will implement fully our respective commitments to enable us to exercise our roles as independent development actors. We will focus on enabling environment consistent with agreed international rights that maximizes the contribution of CSOs to development, and B, encourage CSOs to implement practices that strengthen their accountability and their contribution to development effectiveness that is guided by the Istanbul Principles and the International Framework for CSO Development Effectiveness. So when we talk about this paragraph, it speaks on our role as CSOs, on what it has for us within the Busan Partnership. So on that, in 1141, we can hold governments accountable. So we have our right to hold governments accountable, whilst at the same time, we ourselves, we need to be mutually accountable. Eh? Yeah,
just re-emphasizing the point about
when we go to Sunday school, we like claim certain biblical verses, like I'm a child of God or something like that. That bit there around number A as development, independent development actors in our own rights. That's what we want as civil society out from the Busan Partnership that we need to claim. The whole reason why we're here, we need to promote this. Yeah? And when we say we are an independent development actors, we are saying civil society, it should be at the equal footing as private sector, as government. In a society, that's how we see it, the whole totality of that. But you know, the thing is that we, civil society, don't have any money. Eh? So we claim that we should be at the table, claim our right to be making the same decisions as the government and private sector. They may have the money, but we claim that we know the knowledge about our community, how we live, So this is a bit that we always promote. So when you claim yourself as a child of God in our faith, this is our faith in civil society. We are development actors in our own right, so we should be at the table making the same decisions as our government and our civil society and our private sector. They may have the money to bring to the table, but we bring everything, our family and everyone. Naka.
Any other questions or discussions? Yeah. To
actors and
to be
serving. You don't have the money. They have to be balanced.
okay. In terms of
This is getting excited, eh?
talk about money.
Talk about money, but also talking about who we are. Yeah, because the problem is that oftentimes donors and government often come around and define who we are. Yeah? But this is something that is being agreed on at the global level. We may find that this has not been translated back to our own country. Yeah? And when you start talking about money, when you start asking where's the balance in this? When we're thinking about, the government has the money, private sector has the money, and we don't have the money, apparently that's our money that they're using. Yeah? Because we tax everything that we pay is money, but it's our money. So this is the whole exercise that we want to promote here, is for us to understand where the money goes, because it will give us that, I suppose, empower us to feel like that. You know why? Because us in the Pacific, we don't like to talk about money. It's very uncomfortable to talk about money. Yeah? And when we demand money from government and donors, we feel very uncomfortable. Yeah? But if at the end of this workshop that you don't take home anything else but the understanding that this is your money, that people are trying to, when you see our officials driving around one fancy van with the thing that the windows and all that, you should be thinking to yourself, man, that's my money that this guy is going around with this. And so that should really shift the way we see things. That it should not be that you should not feel uncomfortable talking about where government is using the money, because that's your money. Like me, I'm very uncomfortable sitting in PD knowing that the election is coming up. I can't vote because I pay tax in this country. I don't have a say who should be my leader. Yeah? So that's really what we want to get out of this. Independent is also another word that is important. Yeah? That when we are part, civil society is part of this work, development effectiveness, we demand that we should be independent. We should be hosting some of this meeting on our own before we step out and talk to government. And they should recognize that independence. So I hope that answers. Thank you.
Development is don't agencies together with government. We do not respect our traditional. That's one of our stance.
I don't have any addition to that, but just to agree. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm sure you have heard Vani using that a lot of time when talking about alternative system. Yeah? I used to talk about this because, there are times when I become the good person and she would catch me through. Huh? And I feel like I better return back to Tonga before, when we're talking to government about alternative system, recognizing exactly what your point. How do we merge our traditional system, which we know that it's working in most areas, and that's where we default to. If government system doesn't allow all the support to our families, oftentimes the government sit at the sub-regional level, sub-national level, who is looking after us? Our churches, our traditional leaders, our families, our diaspora communities. Yeah? Those are the alternative systems that we often find that we talk a lot about, particularly in the humanitarian sector, where we say that government should recognize it because they are not able to go all the way to our communities, but some of the systems are in place for a reason by our forefathers. They must have established this because of that, to serve our people. And while I'm talking to government about that in a very nice way, this one here will cut in and say, yeah, when government system doesn't work, somebody died. I just feel like, okay, there goes my diplomacy. But that's really exactly that. We have to make sure that they recognize, but unfortunately, they're not going to recognize it on their own unless we force that out. Yeah? And so today is just like trying to present some of these things to you so that it can make sense. When you talk, when you're part of the conversation, you make a lot more sense. Thank you.
Just to add on it, how you need to assert that power. Assert that power, we are independent without actors. They need to recognize our local system and structure. And the fact that most of these donors, the government, they exist because of us. So that money that they have, it's because of us. It's already highlighted by CIO. So we have a stronger voice as independent government actors.
I think that's a really good point. Many times we go into this space knowing that we have nothing, no money. But this is where human rights, human rights often, so many people that they get turned off at the mention of human rights because it's led to a lot of incoherence in our communities. But what human rights is really just a framework to protect our dignity, human dignity. What's human dignity? Human dignity is in all of us. It's human worth. Yeah? And this relates to many of our faiths. Yeah? So human dignity asserts that everyone has worth. Whether you have money or not, you have worth. Until you're 6 feet under, your voice will not be considered. I mean, what that means is literally is that whether you have money or not, you should be able to enjoy the same rights and privileges or the same rights as any other citizen. And as Busan reminds us that it doesn't say civil society with money play a vital role. It says civil society. Yeah? Of course, doesn't even enjoy a $1 million budget in a year. Yeah? But we go into that space and insist on it because we know this. We go into spaces and many people don't like that. They're very upset about us asserting our power. Why? They say, local NGO, no money, what do they know? Well, Busan gives us the power to speak as your equal partner. Busan equalizes that power. Eh? So whether you come from a DICOS or below community, well, water community, you want to say something about how this country is developed, you have every right to say so. Eh? One, human rights guarantees you that. Second, if you're in a group, if you're part of a group, of a community group, and you want to say something about how development is taking place, Busan gives you that power. That's what the gist is. Yeah? It's not really about whether you have money or not. Yeah? It's about what you're doing for your community and what you're seeing, whether it's working or not. So if you work for the good of community, Busan is your power. Yeah? Particularly in development spaces. Because sometimes you go into spaces and this at this high level, we get scared because the Australian High Commissioner is sitting there, and he has more money. No, actually, you have every right to speak. Eh? But many times, this is about seeing the systems. Eh? As long as we attack the systems, not the people, the systems we're trying to attack, we should be on track. Clear?
Any other questions? Discussions? Anyone wants to add on to the discussion? How?
In terms of systems and in terms of systems and human rights, two different, how do we balance? Because some other human rights are going against.
That's why I talked about what? Dignity, worth, human worth. It's about protect. Human rights are just a framework to protect your worth. Right? Your worth. You know what worth is, eh? That worth, whether you were abused or not, whether you choose this lifestyle or not, you still have that worth. That's guaranteed. Even in our faith, we should know that there are verses that speak to this. Yeah? Human worth doesn't change with the experiences that you have. Yes, you may have a degree, and the person sitting next to you may not have it. But does that mean that he is more precious than this one here? You tell me. No, it's the same. They should be able to have the same access as the person with a degree, or someone sitting on a $80,000 salary to someone with no salary. Yeah? That's what human rights is about. It protects someone's worth, yeah? So that they are not abused. But systems, what were systems built for? Who? Who are systems built for? Us. Why? To protect us, to safeguard us. Why? Because of dignity, yeah, worth. It's the same thing, just different levels we're working at. Okay? Systems, national policies, laws, they are built for us. If they're not working for us, we have every right to question it. Yeah? We have every right to question it. Policies, plans, national development plans, they are put in place for us. Yes? And development cooperation comes because there is national development plans, that these are areas of work that the government wants to do. Can you help us with this? This is what government does. Okay? This is development cooperation explains simply, is that when there is a plan, government goes and looks for partners to help them work on the national development plan. The national development plan was built for us. Okay? So development cooperation should work for us. That's what Busan is about.
Any other discussion before I? Yeah. So now we recognize the importance of Busan. Okay. Moving on from Busan, so just after Busan, I know that tracking the progress on global effective development cooperation, CSOs, specific CSOs or NGOs such as the Fiji Council of Social Services, they have been involved in monitoring the progress that has been made on the implementation. I know that, of course, we will present on that. These are called monitoring rounds. We've already had a bird monitoring round conducted in 2019 by FCOS, by Kengo and Vengo, but at the country level, there were 8 countries in the Pacific that participated in the last monitoring round, mostly by the Ministry of Economy, where they look at how they are able to make a progress on effective development cooperation. For CSOs as well, I know that Siale is here. Much of the work that we are doing with regards to development cooperation and development effectiveness, it's about the enabling environment for us as CSOs to operate. In some of the countries in the world, there is a love-hate relationship between the CSOs and some of the CSOs. They are not allowed to operate in a democratically. So much of that work, I think Siala was part of the delegation in 2019 as well, that look at the Belgrade call to action against shrinking civic space. Even in the Pacific, we have some of the countries where there are shrinking civic spaces for some of our member countries, for our members, member members, to operate in their own country, to carry out the work that they do as independent development partners. So this is a call that there is a need for government to provide that enabling environment, so that for us as CSOs, we're able to carry out our role as independent development actors. Finally, before that's just the history of the effective development cooperation, but at the regional level, as I've already highlighted, we have in 2007 the Pacific Principles on Aid Effectiveness, And then in 2009, before the Busan Agreement came about, the Pacific our Pacific leaders, they've already formed a compact called the Keynes Compact. It's about strengthening development coordination at the regional level. So before Busan, our leaders are already visioning that. So these are some of the things that that are happening. And then when Busan came in, it was just part of the process. It was just like normal to our leaders in the region when they're doing the development cooperation. And just for your information, I know that you will be discussing this. There has been a lot of changes as well in terms of at the regional level when it comes to development cooperation. We've seen the Cotonou Agreement. We've already presented on this in the last NEC workshop. There's been the end of the Cotonou Agreement, and we will be signing a new Samoa Agreement by the end of this year. The Samoa Agreement, that's an agreement between a development cooperation between the ACP countries, African, Caribbean, Pacific, with the EU. So it's about how the EU will work with each of our regions, plus bilaterally with each of our countries. So that's a new agreement that is coming up as well at the regional level. In the next few weeks, our leaders will be convening a meeting. There is a new framework for our regional, the Pacific 2050 strategy, which sets out our development aspirations and specific calendars within from this year until the 2050. So these are some of the things that I know that Siale and Vani are part of the discussions on that. Those are some of the things that we'd like to highlight. And much of this is aligned to the work at the national level, but always ensure that as people who work with the communities, who work with people as CSOs, there is a need to recognize, assert your power as independent development actors, and to voice out that concerns of your constituents or members with authorities. You have that right. You have that right to ensure that they are able to achieve access to their rights as well, others to access their rights. So on that note, any other questions? I take the time.
I think that just addition that as Wani just explained, this is about us. All the things that are being put in place is about us people. I think that the addition point that we have always been fighting for. Okay, it's about us, but that's not enough. About us, but we need to be there in that space to be part of the decision making in finding the solutions for us. This is where the whole pushback for the development effectiveness conversation. The other one is that don't get confused about Busan and Keynes Compact. It's just the place where those agreement was meeting. Yeah? So Busan, Korea.
Yeah.
Busan was in Korea. You see the Paris Agreement. That's because the meeting was in France. Josiah is talking about the Samoa Agreement. That's on the EU. That's going to be happening in Samoa. So those are the names that they put in there, just to confuse us, I suppose. But really, this just to reflect where the meeting was held. That's efficient. Okay.
Any questions? Josiah, a lot to take in.
I know that Vani will be breaking that down slowly in the next few days. The next session, we'll be breaking down each of the Busan history that we have. That's a crash course. Apologies for those that come from the West. I mean, you will almost hypothetical.
I just want to thank you for that presentation. Like Siana said, main thing is understanding. Just with Josiah was at least done something that just following the how, things have been. This morning, just when I came in, the information that was given, I listed on 5 I's. I just thought it's just for the audience. One is information. We need to understand that. When we understood what all these agreements are, then we realize our identity. That was the next I. Now we know who we are, the CSOs and NGOs and whatever. And then the inquiry started coming because we have realized that we have learned of our identity. Now we are, asking all these questions. And the next thing is involvement. Now we want to take part because we know who we are. I'm thankful for that because the right information came. And after, in our involvement is because we want to invest. That's the 5 I's that I just listed from this session.
Thank you so much, Esther.
Any other comments? Or even just, if this is a little bit hard for you to process, just maybe a comment or question that you'd like to pose right now while we still have to say.
Some training to become like our memory verse.
Paragraph 22, I think I'll be here with you similar to Pet. We'll be here with you for the next 4 days.
Question. So this is like when you learn your Bible verse, like Sally said, Like for some of us, you go to church, the thing you learn is John 3:16. This Busan Para 22. Is our perhaps our statement, our power statement when we get involved in these issues is that paragraph 22 guarantees that that we are the equal partners in development, that we should have a say in how development cooperation is done or development in general is done. Often we get asked, why should we involve the CSOs? Oh, Busan. Sometimes when this is a fun story I share. Last night as I was trying to chase off the record. As I was trying to chase the PS economy to come and talk to us about the national policies last night. So I said, hey, did you get my email? He was trying to run away. Did you get my email? I said, what email? I said, I sent you 2 emails already. Why didn't you answer it? He said, oh, I thought that was from the minister. The minister's coming on Friday. You're coming tomorrow. Oh, what do I talk about? You have to talk about EDC. And he says, what's that? Effective Development Cooperation. Yeah, what's that? I said, okay, do you know about the draft monitoring? This is something that governments often have to go through this monitoring process. He said, no, I don't know. We can take part in it. You did in 2018. This is me telling PS funding. I have the PG report on it. You took part. So I mentioned the name of the person. He goes, do you know about the Busan principles? Oh, the Busan principles. Yes, that's what you're supposed to come. So sometimes, in some spaces, they will not know. Yeah? In some spaces, they will not know. But development partners should know. Yeah? Australia, New Zealand. Yeah? So if you feel like their policies and their processes are not following the standards, if you feel something is not right, you check the Busan principles. Okay, it's not in that. Okay, so now in your booklet, in your folder, you have this booklet, right? I had asked my team to indicate in the booklet there where the principles are outlined, the Busan principles. So if you can find it, Milika, what page is it? The Busan principles. Busan principles. It's four. Four very simple things. Page 11. We just go there. Let's see in page 11. So Josiah took us through the journey from Paris to Busan. So we know that so many meetings took place at these high-level places, Paris, and we should have gone to all of those. But some people went to Nairobi. You were at? Some people went to Nairobi, some people went to Busan from the Pacific.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see the first principle. First principle. Page 11.
Page 12.
Page 12. Sorry, page 12. It's 4. You can see 4. Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's looking at
Ownership of development.
focus on results. Focus on results. Yeah.
Inclusive development partnerships.
What do you have the back? Monica, Nicole, accountability and accountability to the interest beneficiaries. So that's what came out of Busan. And in the middle of all of those, the Busan Partnership Agreement, these were the principles that were determined to be principles that will guide how development cooperation effectiveness happens. So if you uphold these principles at the country level, then we should be able to see effective development cooperation. So I leave it there because we have three. Right? And if you have questions, if you're still processing it, Josiah is here, Tiale is here, the team is here if you want to ask those questions over the. Please serve on this side.
I bring for tea. Yeah. Those of us that want to have tea now.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this morning. We ask for your blessings for those that help provide the morning tea for us as we are about to take the food. Give us energy and guidance and continue to serve your people. In Jesus' name, our Lord. Amen.